Hi friends, David here from Learn Christmas Lighting, and in this video we're pumped, we're really excited because we're going to talk all about EVOs, talk about EVO pixels, show you how they're going to react, how they're going to respond in your display, and then we're going to follow it up in our next video and do a real life on the Coro in the strip experiment. EVOs versus regular pixels. Can you tell the difference? Does anybody care? We will show you. Let's dive in. Okay, so the premise of this is simple. EVOs are fairly new, and there's a lot of people using them in their displays, but honestly, compared to the amount of bullet pixels out there, there's really not that many. So here today, I've got a 12-volt controller, Meanwell LRS 350 12-volt power supply, 10-foot X-Connect cable from that going to the Falcon F-Test. Great little box. And we're going to use that, one, to monitor our current as we plug stuff in, and two, to see how much power things take. And of course, we'll put the big numbers on the screen. Thank you, JP, our awesome editor. So what we want to do is really compare the difference between EVOs and regular pixels, and then talk about how you get power to your EVO pixels. They're not evil, they're actually quite nice. And what that looks like, including using tools like the Spiker Power Tees. So all of that to say, let's dive in and start testing and show you what's going on. So I've got my setup here, and I'm just going to start by plugging in these standard bullet pixels. This is, I believe, 100 bullet pixels, but the F-Test will tell me. And I honestly, these don't have a manufacturer label on them. I don't know where they came from, but they're a standard typical bullet pixel. And it tells me that there are 606 pixels. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to remember how to use the F-Test. Oh, 606 is the pixel in, sorry. Pixel out. It's going to count them real quick. Da, 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 da. And there's 100, yep. And so now we're in a green-purple alternate pattern, which I do kind of like. Let's see what else we got, though. So let's just do the RGBW pattern. I think that's a good one. Okay, current bounces all over the place. Actually, let's just do solid white. Solid white, full count. Volts are dropping to about 11.6. Current is right around, it bounces around, but it's around 1 amp total. Oh, brightness is at 30%, so let's go ahead and change that. So 100% brightness, that makes more sense. Current is 2.3-ish amps. Voltage is dropping down to about 11, and they're all lighting. These are a resistor pixel, I do know that much. Everybody's lighting up, nobody's dimming, etc. So that's kind of our benchmark, 2.3-ish amps on the pixels themselves. Of course, if we go to the back side, we'll then see, so it's 11 amps on this side, but if we take the F-Test and we put it after the pixels, we should be able to see what the voltage drop is. I think the F-Test works like that. Or else I could go get my real meter, but what fun is that? So F-Test is powering. Oh, you know what? In order to do that, actually, I would have to be sending a test pattern from my controller, which I'm not really set up to do. So we're going to ignore that for right now. I know all the haters are going to yell at me. We could do that maybe at the end of this video. Okay, so we've tested that full white, 2.3 amps-ish at full on a regular strand of pixels. Now we'll put this on top of an expensive lighting console just for kicks and grab 100 EVOs. So here's a wad of EVOs that I've been using for months to do testing and whatnot. We're going to go find the plugs. They hide, they hide. It's like the children trying to get them to go to the bathroom or something. They hide. Okay, there we go. Perfecto. So now I'm going to go ahead to set up our pattern again. So we're on alternate. So full white, we're running 100 EVOs. Oh, brightness went back. 100%. So we are at the The highest number I'm seeing is 0.96 amp. That was when they first fired up. Now we're sitting closer to 0.94 amps as the max. And so you can see there very easily, you know, off the bat, about half the wattage of what you had coming out of the regular Pixels. So now let's go ahead for fun and do 200, okay? So what happens at 200 EVOs is, I'm going to look here at the end, look at my last couple pixels, compare them to my first couple pixels. They look identical. Total current is around 1.6 amps, which is interesting. So let's go back. Let's do like, should have gone the other way. There we go. So say we do a white ramp on it, and from start to finish, everybody's dimming, everybody's doing what they should. It looks good. We're still at 100% brightness because, as I best understand, the brightness control is an amperage control on controllers. So you're effectively, you are knocking down brightness, but you're also knocking down power, which could mean that the voltage could drop earlier, though I'm not an engineer. So let's go ahead and open up more EVOs. So we're gonna go for 300 here. Nice factory watt of EVOs. And survey says, plug them in, plug them in. Okay, we're getting ourselves up to just over 2 amps on those 300 EVOs at full. And you can probably see this when these ramp up, these start turning purpley. At the end, they start getting real purpley. And so let's go ahead to full white. And interestingly enough, instead of getting purpley, they're stroby. Yeah. When I compare them physically, they're stroby, they're a little voltage starved. You might not be able to see that well in the video, but if you look in the overhead, I don't know if it'll be any better. Not really. And so that's totally okay as well. Back at it, had to take a quick phone call. Now let's look at, so we're at full weight, we're at 100%. We're pulling approximately 1.7 amps after it's been sitting here running at full for a number of minutes. But obviously, these ones at the end, if it's not really obvious on the camera, I know it's way blowing out, but they're really stroby, which is always, it's a sign of an LED with low power. So we don't love that. So that's where, bringing in the spiker tee, if we can find it, just some end power injection, or as people in the Christmas light hobby like to call power balancing, and I digress. We're gonna pop that in. That should solve it. In pretty much all situations, doing power balancing or what's called end power injection is going to double the amount of pixels you can run. So if you haven't done it before, we're just gonna unplug the direct output from our controller. We're gonna plug in the spiker tee. Okay, so it's got 2 male plugs and a female, and so if I do that right, oh, the ring just came off this F-test, not that that matters that much. And so what we're going to do then is go ahead and pop in the start of our pixels here, and I hope we don't blow any fuses. We should be fine. It's going to be the same amount of power. It doesn't change the power rating, but what it does do when you're on the same power supply for all your pixels is it allows you to boost the voltage. And you probably saw there when I plugged it in, it's painfully obvious that now everybody's running full speed, everybody's full brightness. Okay, so now we're at 300. So let's go ahead, undo our spiker tee from the back side, go spend some more money on some EVOs, and open these kids up. Off we go. Put in our next one on the output of this side. Yep, I'm just going to keep everybody straight there. Send Mr. John Spiker down to the ground. And yeah, obviously it's more stroby at 400, but we'll go ahead. And this is full white, of course. We'll do our spiker power. I would say that at 400 at 100% full white right now, they're starting to get a little power hungry. Because what I can see on my overhead, and it might not be, super obvious to you, is first string and last string, because they're getting the direct most power, they're looking really good. Okay, the strings in the middle, they're getting stroby, they're getting a little weak. Of course, this is full white, right? And so that's at 100%. So this is actually a really good opportunity to talk about the constant current LEDs and how they manage power differently. We're going to do that not with some scientific approach, but just by looking at it. So currently, our current, the amperage, pun intended, is 2.8 to 2.9 amps. Okay, that's what I'm seeing as my max. All right, so now if I go down, whoops, and just start pulling down the power, I'm gonna see my overall amperage go up a little bit. Okay, so now I'm at like 3.2 amps and I'm at about 60%. I'm about 50%, I'm at 3.3 amps. Voltage is saying 10.6. I'm gonna keep dropping. Let's just go to 10% for kicks. 10%. So what's interesting to me, and I've kind of observed this, because I honestly run my regular pixels like really low in my show, typically 10 or 20%. I just, I don't have a ton of light in my neighborhood, and that keeps it from being overwhelming, from, making the neighbors hate me, and it still looks great. But at 10%, interestingly, I'm pulling about an amp to, it spikes up near about 1.5 amps. At 100%, we're at about 3 amps, okay? And they seem happy. So I know that there's a lot of, info out there, a lot of people saying, okay, don't run them at 50%, they're really less efficient, and that is true. Because, full, once again, right about 3 amps, just under. 50%, we're at 3.5 amps. So this is 400 EVOs. It's, not gonna change your life, the amount of power difference, but it is something there, and it's something to consider. But then we're at 3.3 amps. We start going down from 50%. 40%, we're sitting around a little bit lower, just touching 3 amps. Now 30%. 3 amps is like the top of the spike, so we're running from about 2.7 or 2.6 to 3. 20%. So based off of what I'm seeing here, and the way that I honestly run my display and coach people to, is, I consider 50% like the fullest you should run your display at. And maybe that's just me, and maybe that's because, like, for example, I've used Minleon product. In Minleon, most of their products are a 0.3 watt LED, whereas most of the products in, the typical bullet pixels in the residential space are a 0.6. Okay, so 50% on a typical residential bullet about equals that 0.3 from Minleon. Okay, and so, there's something to be said there, but it's nice and stable throughout. I've got a good level of brightness. I think I'm pretty happy with it. I know some people get really intense about colors and saturation and differences, and we're gonna look at that in our next video. But for me, honestly, I'm just like, hey, make the kids in the neighborhood happy, give an awesome light show. They want it to flash, they want it to change colors, they want it to look cool. Do I care about the purity of the colors as much? I really don't. That's me. You can be different. But at 30%, we're at a little bit less than typical. Oopsie doodles. At 20%, we're actually at a good bit less, because we're peaking out at about 2.2 amps instead of 3, which is where we were at 100%. Okay. At 10%, just go kill an ant. I would say it's pretty weak at that point, and we'll cover this more in the next video. And we're, close to an amp. We're kind of bouncing around that 1.2 to just under an amp total. So let's just say, for kicks and giggles, we go ahead and we sit at 30%, okay? And we pull our power injection, our spiker T. Okay, what happens? Okay, at full white, we're getting purpley at the ends. It's responding a lot like a resistor pixel. If we go up, let's see what happens. 40, 50%. I just watch the amount that are purple come over. Okay, but again, it's like they hit a point of power draw. Like this is 70%. where they start getting less and less purpley, but then they just get weak, right? So like at full, they get weak and stroby, also not a good look. Back to 30-20%, interestingly, as I cycle through it, you see where it's like, okay, I can, at 30% without any power injection, for example, do 300, and at full white, I'm pretty happy with how it looks. And if this was a pattern or anything else, I know it would look really great. In fact, let's just do that, right? So if we go to one of the other ones, red, green, blue, white, black, yeah. Like this cycle with red, green, blue, white, and black at 30%, I think it looks great at 300. It looks really nice. And so I think, just based off this quick study of it, I'm just gonna go back to full white. There we go. Go back to full white. It's like I get a little bit of color degradation, but I would say at 30%, 10-foot extension off the controller, power supply set to 12 volts, I'm happy doing 300, which means that with the spiker tee, all day long, I should be able to do 600 because that's how power injection works, right? And I clearly see if I go up to 400 here, and then I drop in my spiker tee, like everything looks really dandy, everything looks good. I'm not sure I really feel like opening up more EVOs because I know the math will check out because I've been working with this stuff for a long time. And that's just how power injection works. So, what's that to say? In terms of pixels per port on EVOs, I'm going to say if you're running 30%, I would either run them at 30% or 100%. I would put those as your two options, 30% or less or 100%. Because as you drop from 100%, you definitely see that amperage increase. It does get less bright, but obviously your amperage increases, so that's not all that helpful. But at 30% or 100%, at 30% rather, we can be really happy running 300 pixels without power injection, or if you're doing a back-end power injection, that would be 600 on a port before you got to worry about anything else. And that's a lot. That's really good. With a standard bullet pixel at 30%, typically, it's going to be pretty similar, actually. I know I can get up to that 300 to 500-ish range typically and be really happy with. So it's going to be really similar, honestly. In terms of 100%, let's run through that test again quick. So 100%, again, pulling my power injection, it is not happy at 400, right? It is not as happy as I would like it to be at 300, which I'm not surprised. So at about 200, it's pretty happy. And this becomes the point where I guess I don't really want to open the 50s, but I do. Okay, guys. If you need EVOs, please get them from us because we're spending our good hard-earned cash here to open these for you. Just means I have to use them in my display, I guess. So we're going to pull a 50 out, right? And plug it in. And yeah, even that 250, in my opinion, this is getting too weak and too stroby at 100 to be happy. So I would say at 30% for optimal full whites, I would recommend, in most cases, 10-foot lead from your controller, 12 volt, 30%, 200 pixels, 400 with a spiker tee or just any old end power injection. At full, 200 pixels, not 250, with a spiker tee, 400, you should be happy to go. At 30%, you could do 400 without that power injection. Let's double check that math. You can go no power injection. At 30%. And no, it does get a little bit weak. So that means that 30%, and JP will help us keep this straight because he's the best editor ever. Honestly, it's pretty much the same, where after 200, it starts to get weak. It gets weak and purpley and not as stroby as at full. But I don't think my recommendations really change. And that's probably going to be the biggest thing because I drop in some end power injection here at 400 and it looks really good. We're really happy with it. Actually, now that I say that, let's just go to 450 on this string. Okay. And spiker tee looking good. Go to 500. There they are. Gets real purpley. So then we spiker tee it. Spiker tee Washington. So yeah, this is 100, 200, 300. So that's 500. And with the spiker tee, I'm really happy with it. And so that means we're just going to keep spending money. Plug these in. So now we're at 600. And yeah, at 600, that's where I'm seeing really quite a drop towards the middle. So I would say I would say 500 with the spiker tee. Without the spiker tee power injection, let's see, 300. So yeah, I'm gonna say, 250 at 30% is probably going to be about your max. If you're at full white, the end's going to get a little funky, but overall it's okay. And it should ramp just okay. At 20%, you're going to get a little bit more. Okay. But overall, it works really well. Like when you pull it to full on that white ramp, you see it get purpley. So I would say about 300 and about 500 with power injection. Of course, should be able to get to about 600, but the middle starts to get a little discolored. So 250 to 300 without, 500 to 600 with power injection via spiker tee or similar, and you should be good to go. And now that I've just spent this money on these EVOs, why don't you do it too? Seriously, if you're considering EVOs, I know there's multiple places to get them. We're working hard to keep them in stock as best we can, to order as many as we can. And the way you can help us with that is by ordering through us. Obviously, if you've learned something from this video today, then you've benefited from what we do here at Learn Christmas Lighting and Above AVL, the Learn Stage Lighting gear store. And you can find the EVOs. We'll link straight to them down below there. We'd love to get them to you. We ship fast. We're honest. We try to help people as much as we can. And these videos don't get made unless people buy stuff. So go ahead and buy some stuff. We appreciate you. Have a great day. See ya.